They rocked the 80s, then vanished into the shadows. Here are 30 forgotten bands that deserve a second listen, and maybe a spot on your playlist. If you've never heard of Shark Island, you're not alone, but you've definitely seen their influence. Frontman Richard Black was one of the most electrifying performers on the Sunset Strip in the early 80s, and his stage presence directly influenced Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses. Their 1989 album, Law of the Order, showcased their high-energy, sleazy, hard rock sound. Tracks like Paris Calling and Bad for Each Other had all the makings of major hits, but despite their talent, Shark Island suffered from poor promotion and bad timing. Signed to Epic Records, they should have taken off, but grunge was already looming on the horizon. Without major label support, they faded into obscurity, even though their style laid the groundwork for later glam metal acts. If you're a fan of bands like Guns N' Roses and Faster Pussycat, Shark Island deserves a spot on your playlist. Ratt should have been even bigger than they were. They had the looks, the hooks, and a guitar sound that made them stand out from the countless bands on the Sunset Strip. Their 1984 album Out of the Cellar was a massive success, with Round and Round becoming a staple of rock radio. Warren DeMartini's guitar work was fluid and melodic, and Stephen Pearcy's raspy vocals gave their songs an edge. But despite their success, they never reached the same level as Guns N' Roses or Def Leppard. Internal conflicts tore them apart. Pearcy clashed with the rest of the band, leading to tensions that never fully went away. Robin Crosby, their talented rhythm guitarist, struggled with addiction, which affected both his playing and his health. As the band tried to keep things together, egos, money disputes, and constant infighting made it impossible to move forward. By the early 90s, the scene had changed, and Ratt was no longer the force they once were. They had the talent, but the drama ultimately won. Alright, let's kick this off with a band that even die-hard 80s rock fans might have missed, Airkraft. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about these guys until a buddy of mine played them during a late-night hangout, and wow, talk about an underrated gem. They came out of Wisconsin and had that smooth, radio-friendly AOR sound. Think a mix of Journey, Survivor, and early REO Speedwagon. Their self-titled debut in '84, it's packed with glossy keyboards, killer harmonies, and hooks that should have been all over FM radio. Songs like Can't Run Away and It's Not So Easy sound like they were made for cruising down the highway with the top down. What's wild is that Airkraft actually opened for some huge names back in the day. REO Speedwagon, Survivor, even Night Ranger. They had the chops, the look, and the sound. But without a major label behind them, they never got the push they needed. Classic case of right band, wrong time. If you grew up in the 80s, you might remember Lion, even if you don't recognize the name. This hard rock band is best known for recording the iconic theme song for Transformers. The movie, a track packed with soaring vocals and blistering guitar work. Formed in Los Angeles, Lion had all the right ingredients for success. Their 1987 album Dangerous Attraction featured Doug Aldrich on guitar, a player who would later make a name for himself with Dio and Whitesnake. Songs like Power Love and Fatal Attraction blended the powerful anthemic sound of bands like Dokken and Scorpions. So why did they vanish? Despite their talent, they never got a major breakthrough. They lacked big promotional backing, and after one more album, Trouble in Angel City, they quietly disbanded. Lion may not have roared onto the mainstream charts, but their melodic metal legacy still deserves a listen today. Bullet Boys had everything going for them. A charismatic frontman, a bluesy Van Halen-inspired sound, and a debut album that made some serious noise. Their 1988 self-titled record delivered the sleazy rocker Smooth Up in Ya and a powerful cover of the OJ's For the Love of Money. It climbed to number 34 on the Billboard 200, setting them up for what should have been a long and successful career. But timing is everything, and theirs was just a little off. Their second album, Freak Show, had solid tracks like Hang On St. Christopher, a cover of the track by Tom Waits, and THC Groove, but it came out in 1991, right before grunge exploded. By the time Zaza was released, the world had moved on. It had strong songs like 1-800-Goodbye, but it barely made a dent. They tried to adapt with Acid Monkey, leaning into a grungier, punk-inspired sound, but it didn't work. Had they broken through just a few years earlier, things might have turned out very differently.
Lives on my blog. Yes, you got
Steelheart hit the scene in 1990, but let's be honest, they sounded like a full-blown 80s band. Everything from the high-octane vocals to the polished guitar solos screamed glam metal, even as grunge was waiting in the wings. Their debut album delivered more than just the hit, I'll Never Let You Go, Angel Eyes. Tracks like She's Gone and Can't Stop Me Lovin' You proved they had serious chops. And frontman Miljenko Matievich, that guy could hit notes most singers wouldn't dare dream of. Pure vocal firepower. Here's the twist. In 1992, during a live show, a lighting truss collapsed and crushed Matievich's face mid-performance. Just like that, the band's rising star was stopped cold. He survived, but the moment and the momentum was gone. It's a shame because Steelheart had all the makings of a long-haul rock act. Give that debut a fresh listen. It still hits hard today. Seattle is mostly known for birthing the grunge movement, but before that, the city had its fair share of hard rock and metal. One of its most overlooked bands was Q5, a group that blended melodic hooks with heavy metal grit. Their 1984 debut album, Steal the Light, was packed with anthems that should have made them household names. Songs like Lonely Lady and Pull the Trigger had the intensity of Judas Priest combined with the melody of early Def Leppard. The album was well received in underground rock circles, but Q5 never got the industry push they needed. Their 1985 follow-up, When the Mirror Cracks, shifted toward a more commercial sound, but instead of broadening their audience, it alienated their core fans. With record label issues and internal struggles, Q5 disbanded before they ever had a real chance to shine. For those who love classic heavy metal with big melodies, Q5 is a hidden gem worth rediscovering. This new rock channel is also a hidden gem waiting to be discovered, and you can help me by getting this channel to 1,000 subscribers, so my new rock videos will not be overlooked. Let's continue with a band that was unfortunately one of the most overlooked hard rock bands of the late 80s. Well, it certainly started off strong for Autograph. In 1984, just a year after forming, they scored a massive hit with Turn Up the Radio, an anthem built for cranking the volume. Their debut album, Sign In Please, broke into the top 30, and with constant MTV airplay, it seemed like they were on their way to something big. But the momentum didn't last. Their follow-up single, Send Her to Me, barely got any radio play. The band was rushed back into the studio, and That's the Stuff was released in the same year, carrying over a few tracks from the first album. The result? It flopped, with only Blondes in Black Cars making a small impact. By 1987, they were struggling. Even cameos from Ozzy Osbourne and Vince Neil in a music video couldn't save them. By 1989, it was over. Timing, label pressure, and missed opportunities sealed their fate. Now here's a band that should have been huge, the Bees. Ever heard of them? Most folks haven't, and that's the crime. Formed in Chicago, these guys dropped their debut album Get Up in 1982, and it was loaded with punchy power pop meets hard rock energy. Think Cheap Trick meets The Knack, but with more edge and polish. Their lead single, Get Up, even landed them a spot on American Bandstand, and for a brief moment, it looked like they were going to take off. The songs had attitude, the band was tight, and they came out swinging. But what really made them stand out? Their live shows were electric. They'd play like they were headlining Madison Square Garden, even if it was just a local club in Chicago. Frontman Tom Holland, who had also played with Steppenwolf, brought this gritty, no-nonsense energy that pulled you in. They weren't just catchy, they were hungry, and that hunger still crackles through every track. Baton Rouge was formed in Louisiana before relocating to Los Angeles. They blended powerful vocals, bluesy guitar work, and soaring melodies that put them in the same league as Tesla and Cinderella. Their 1989 debut album, Shake Your Soul, was produced by Jack Ponte, who had worked with Bon Jovi. Songs like Walks Like a Woman and Doctor showcased a polished, melodic hard rock sound with killer riffs and big choruses. Despite their strong songwriting and high-energy performances, they struggled to stand out in a crowded rock scene. Their follow-up album, Lights Out on the Playground, was released in 1991, but by then the rise of grunge had started to wipe out bands of their style. Without major radio support, Baton Rouge faded into obscurity. For fans of bluesy hard rock with arena-ready hooks, Baton Rouge remains a forgotten gem of the late 80s. Coming from Sweden, Shotgun Messiah had all the ingredients of a great rock band. Flashy image, killer riffs, and an attitude that screamed rebellion. Unlike many of their Sunset Strip peers, they had a raw, punk-influenced edge that made them stand out. Their 1989 debut was pure glam metal energy, packed with songs like Shout It Out and Don't Care About Nothing. But just as they were making noise, everything changed. Their second album, Second Coming, ditched the glam look in favor of a heavier, sleazier sound. Tim Skold took over on vocals, and while tracks like Heartbreak Boulevard showed a harder side, they struggled to find their place in a shifting rock landscape. By their third album, they transformed again, this time into an industrial metal act, but by then their identity was too scattered. The talent was there, but constant reinvention left them without a solid fan base, and they faded into cult band status. Let's crank things up with a wild one from Denmark, DAD, short for Disneyland After Dark. Yeah, they had to shorten the name after the Walt Disney Company threatened legal action. That alone tells you these guys weren't afraid to stir things up. Their 1989 album No Fuel Left for the Pilgrims was a straight-up scorcher. Gritty, catchy, and packed with attitude. Songs like Sleeping My Day Away delivered AC/DC-style swagger with a punk edge, and frontman Jesper Binzer had that perfect rough-around-the-edges vocal growl. Here's the kicker. They were huge in Europe. Stadium shows, chart-topping singles, the whole deal. But in the US, they stayed a cult favorite. Maybe it was the accent, maybe the name confusion, but they never got the break they deserved stateside. Still, these guys brought serious heat. If you like your rock raw, loud, and a little unhinged, DAD will be your new favorite discovery. They still tour.
You see, it could be asleep, it's not a rest.
Hailing from Canada, Kick was a hard rock band that had the talent and firepower to become huge, but never got the break they needed. They combined anthemic choruses, sharp guitar work, and melodic hooks, making them a band that should have been as big as Quiet Riot or Ratt. Their debut album, Vices, was released in 1984 and had all the elements of a classic 80s hard rock record. Tracks like Heavy Metal Shuffle, On the Road to Rock were filled with powerful vocals, massive riffs, and arena-ready energy. Despite a strong underground following, they never broke into the mainstream. Kick continued with two more solid albums, Welcome to the Club and Rock the World, but poor promotion and lineup changes hurt their momentum. By the late 80s, they had disappeared. For fans of big hooks and heavy-hitting rock, Kick is an underrated band that deserves a second listen. Before they became Kicks, the band originally started under the name The Shoes in the mid to late 1970s. They later changed their name to the Generators before finally settling on Kicks in 1979. It took years before they got the breakthrough they deserved. It wasn't until their fourth album, Blow My Fuse, in 1988 that they finally hit it big. The album delivered their biggest hit, the power ballad Don't Close Your Eyes, a song that tackled the serious issue of teen suicide. Alongside it were Cold Blood, She Dropped Me the Bomb, Get It While It's Hot, and the title track, all packed with their signature high-energy sound. Kicks had found their moment, but it was short-lived. Much like Bullet Boys, their late 80s arrival left them in a tough spot. By the early 90s, glam metal was fading, and grunge had taken over. Kicks had one of the most consistently solid catalogs of the era, but they were just missing that one extra hit to keep them at the top. Time to unleash the riffs. Fifth Angel is one of those bands that serious 80s metal fans still swear by. Their 1986 self-titled debut, absolutely packed with soaring vocals, twin guitar attacks, and dramatic, high-energy songwriting. Hailing from Seattle, before the grunge wave, they leaned more Iron Maiden than Soundgarden. Ted Pilot's vocals were theatrical and powerful, and the guitar work from Ed Archer and James Bird, precision with punch. Here's the crazy part. They recorded that debut before ever playing a single live gig. They were studio tight from day one, which made their first album sound like a seasoned band already firing on all cylinders. They never broke big in the US, but in Europe and among collectors, that record's a prized piece of 80s metal history. If you like your rock epic, melodic, and packed with guitar fireworks, Fifth Angel is a band you need to revisit. One of the most underrated hard rock bands to emerge from the 80s was Black and Blue. Hailing from Portland, Oregon, they had the look, the hooks, and the energy to compete with the biggest bands of the glam metal era. Their self-titled debut album, released in 1984, was packed with high-energy rock anthems, including Hold On to 18 and School of Hard Knocks. Produced by Dieter Dierks, known for his work with Scorpions, the album had a slick, polished sound that should have made them stars. Despite their talent and a growing fan base, Black and Blue struggled to break into the mainstream. They released several more solid albums, including Nasty Nasty and In Heat, but never reached the success of bands like Ratt or Motley Crue. Though they faded from the spotlight, Black and Blue's music remains a hidden gem for fans of 80s hard rock filled with massive choruses and killer guitar riffs. Dangerous Toys brought a southern twist to the glam metal scene, blending sleazy hard rock with raw, unpolished attitude. Formed in Texas, they weren't just another Hollywood hair band. They had grit, groove, and a frontman, Jason McMaster, whose raspy snarl set them apart. Their 1989 debut introduced them with a bang, featuring Teasin', Pleasin', Scared, and Sportin' a Woody. It had the energy of Guns N' Roses with a touch of Aerosmith swagger, earning them a loyal following. But behind the scenes, the industry pressure was mounting. Their label pushed them toward a more polished sound, and their second album, Hellacious Acres, toned down their raw edge. It had solid tracks like Line 'Em Up and Gimme No Lip, but by then, grunge had taken over. Rather than fade quietly, they fired back with Pissed in 1994, a heavier, angrier album that rejected trends. It didn't bring them back to the charts, but it proved they would never conform. If you were into glam metal in the mid-80s, King Kobra looked like the next big thing. Founded by legendary drummer Carmine Appice of Vanilla Fudge and Ozzy Osbourne fame, this band had serious rock pedigree. Their 1985 debut, Ready to Strike, hit hard with flashy solos, anthemic choruses, and that unmistakable hair metal sheen. Songs like Hunger and Shadow Rider had all the ingredients for arena domination: big hooks, tight musicianship, and killer energy. But King Kobra wasn't just about style. They had substance. Their lineup featured future stars like Mark Free, later Marcy Free of Signal, and Unruly Child, whose vocals were downright explosive. So why didn't they go the distance? The lineup kept changing, and the glam scene got crowded fast. Still, those first albums are a goldmine of underrated 80s rock. If you're into bands like Dokken or early Ratt, King Kobra's worth revisiting. Loud. If any band had the potential for stardom, it was White Tiger. Formed by Mark St. John, the former Kiss guitarist, this band had all the ingredients for success: blazing guitar solos, powerful vocals, and a hard-hitting sound that fit perfectly in the mid-80s rock scene. Their 1986 self-titled debut album featured high-energy tracks like Rock Warriors and Love Hate, showcasing St. John's shredding abilities and the band's raw, aggressive edge. Fans of Dokken and Y&T would have found a lot to love in White Tiger's music. Unfortunately, the band never gained mainstream traction. Despite Mark St. John's name recognition from Kiss, White Tiger suffered from poor promotion, label struggles, and a lack of radio play. After one album, they disappeared almost as quickly as they arrived. For guitar lovers and 80s hard rock enthusiasts, White Tiger remains a forgotten gem, featuring some of the most underrated shredding of the decade. Few bands get their big break by winning a battle of the bands, but that's exactly how Tora Tora landed their record deal. Hailing from Memphis, they had a bluesy, hard rock sound that stood out from the Hollywood scene. Their 1989 debut, Surprise Attack, made a strong impression, with Walk-In Shoes and Guilty earning them airplay and a growing fan base. But just as they were gaining momentum, disaster struck. Their second album, Wild America, dropped in 1992, but instead of a major tour, their label fell into financial trouble. Promotions stalled, and with grunge taking over, they were left fighting an uphill battle. By the time their third album was recorded, the label collapsed, and the record never saw the light of day. They had the songs, the talent, and the grit, but luck wasn't on their side. For those who remember, Tora Tora deserved far more than they got. Let's talk about one of the most technically gifted yet criminally underrated bands of the era, TNT. Hailing from Norway, they brought a slick, melodic hard rock sound that absolutely shredded, but somehow flew under the radar in the US. Their breakout album, Tell No Tales, released in 1987, was packed with arena-ready hooks and jaw-dropping guitar work from Ronnie Latecra, a true virtuoso who deserves way more recognition. Songs like 10,000 Lovers in One and Everyone's a Star were big in Europe, but barely made a dent on US radio. And then there's Tony Harnell, the American vocalist who joined midstream and brought an insane vocal range, soaring, emotional, and theatrical. Together, they crafted songs that were both musically complex and totally singable. TNT didn't play dumbed-down rock, they brought brains and chops to glam metal gloss. If you like your riffs tight and your vocals sky high, these guys are a must-listen. Los Angeles was overflowing with talented hard rock bands in the 80s, and Rough Cutt was one that had all the makings of a major act. With ties to Quiet Riot and Ratt, they had the pedigree, the musicianship, and a powerful frontman in Paul Shortino whose raspy, soulful vocals set them apart. Their self-titled debut album, released in 1985, was filled with anthemic rockers like Take Her and Dreamin' Again. Produced by Tom Allom, known for his work with Judas Priest, the album combined melodic hooks with hard-hitting riffs, making it a standout in the glam metal scene. Despite critical praise and a dedicated fan base, Rough Cutt never broke through commercially. A second album, Wants You, followed in 1986, but internal struggles and label issues led to their downfall. Though they vanished from the mainstream, Rough Cutt's music still holds up, offering a gritty, powerful take on 80s hard rock. Some bands have to grind for years to land a record deal. Baton Rouge got theirs before they even had a band name. Originally called Voices, they caught the attention of producer Jack Ponte, who saw potential, and helped rebrand them. Hailing from Louisiana, they blended classic rock influences with the polished production of late 80s hard rock. Their 1990 debut, Shake Your Soul, showcased their melodic power with tracks like Walks Like a Woman and There Was a Time. But momentum can disappear fast. Their second album, Lights Out on the Playground, arrived in 1991, right as grunge was dominating the industry. Despite strong tracks like Desperate and The Midge, the band struggled to stay relevant. Lineup changes and shifting musical trends left them without a clear future. They had the voice, the hooks, and the talent, but their time in the spotlight was cut far too short. You think you know Cinderella, right? Big hair, big ballads, and MTV staples like Nobody's Fool and Don't Know What You Got. But there's a whole other side to this band that most people overlook. By the time Heartbreak Station hit in 1990, Cinderella had traded glam for grit, blending bluesy riffs with heartfelt lyrics. It was more Stones than Sunset Strip. Tracks like Shelter Me and the title track revealed a band growing deeper, rawer, and more honest. Tom Kiefer, the band's driving force, still hits the stage today with his solo band, playing Cinderella classics alongside new material, and he sounds just as fierce. His raspy vocals and emotional delivery have aged like fine whiskey. So yeah, Cinderella might have started out as glam, but they finished with soul and serious staying power. If you skipped their later catalog, do yourself a favor, dig in and catch a live show if you can. Hailing from Philadelphia, Tangier was a bluesy hard rock band that had the talent to compete with bands like Great White and Bad Company. Their sound was rooted in classic rock influences, combining soulful vocals, gritty guitar work, and big, radio-friendly hooks. Their debut album, Four Winds, released in 1989, showcased anthemic tracks like On the Line and Southbound Train. Produced by Andy Johns, who had worked with Led Zeppelin, the album had a polished yet raw sound that should have propelled them to success. Despite strong songwriting and critical praise, Tangier suffered from poor promotion and bad timing. The rise of grunge in the early 90s made it difficult for blues-based hard rock to stay relevant, and they quickly faded from the spotlight after releasing Stranded in 1991. For fans of blues-driven hard rock, Tangier remains a lost treasure that deserved much more recognition. Some bands chase fame. Stranger chased the road. While other 80s rock acts fought for MTV airtime, these Florida rockers built their reputation the hard way. Relentless touring and electrifying live shows. Unlike the Sunset Strip bands, they had a bluesier, southern-tinged edge, making them a regional favorite. Their 1981 self-titled debut had all the swagger of a national hit, with Swamp Woman and Jackie's So Bad showcasing their raw energy. But despite their growing fan base, Epic Records dropped them after just one album, leaving them without major label support. Undeterred, they kept going, self-releasing music and selling out clubs well into the late 80s. Songs like Okeechobee Whiskey and Mama Mama proved they had the talent, but the industry never gave them a fair shot. Stranger never became household names, but for those who caught them live, they were one of rock's best-kept secrets. Saigon Kick, formed in the late 80s in Miami. They were already mixing styles before anyone knew what to call it. Glam, metal, psychedelic pop, yes, all of it. Their debut dropped in 1991, but they were definitely a product of the 80s underground scene. Tight leather, big hooks, and fearless experimentation. Their second album, The Lizard, gave us the haunting ballad Love Is On The Way, which briefly cracked the mainstream.
Love is on the way.
But if that's all you know, you're missing the good stuff. Guitarist Jason Beeler crafted massive riffs one minute and delicate acoustic passages the next. Frontman Matt Kramer had a theatrical vibe that added even more drama. They didn't care about fitting into one lane. Every song was a curveball. Too weird for radio. Too talented to ignore. Saigon Kick is one of the most adventurous and underrated bands to come out of the late 80s rock scene.
Love is on the way. I live for you.
Lightning struck too late for Sherif. And by the time their biggest song hit #1, the band had already broken up. Formed in Canada, they released just one album in 1982 featuring the power ballad When I'm With You. The song barely made a dent at the time, and after struggling for years with little success, they called it quits in 1985. But fate had other plans. In 1989, a radio DJ in the US started playing When I'm With You, sparking a resurgence. The song climbed the charts and eventually hit #1. But there was a problem. Sherif no longer existed. Attempts to reunite fell apart, with guitarist Steve DeMarchi and bassist Arnold Lanny forming Frozen Ghost, while the remaining members tried to capitalize on the success. Sherif had the rarest kind of hit, a #1 song without a band to support it. In the end, timing was both their curse and their legacy. Okay, now, Electric Angels formed in the late 80s out of the ashes of glam punk band Candy, and from the start, they had Next Big Thing written all over them, with ties to Kiss's Gene Simmons, who managed them, and a major label deal with Atlantic. The stars looked aligned. Their 1990 self-titled debut delivered glam rock with brains and bite. Think the sleaze of the New York Dolls crossed with the melodic punch of Cheap Trick. Songs like True Love and Other Fairy Tales and the Drinking Song weren't just catchy. They had soul, sarcasm, and swagger. But the follow-up album? Shelved. Industry politics did what bad reviews couldn't. Bury a great band. Still, their cult following stuck around, and that lost second album eventually saw the light years later. They had the look, the songs, and Gene Simmons in their corner, and still vanished without a trace. If that doesn't scream forgotten gem, I don't know what does. Fronted by David Reese, the powerhouse vocalist who briefly fronted Accept, Bangalore Choir had all the makings of a major hard rock band. They combined big choruses, slick production, and razor-sharp guitar work, making them a perfect fit alongside bands like Danger Danger and Taiketo. Their 1992 debut album, On Target, featured anthemic tracks like Loaded Gun and Angel in Black. Packed with radio-friendly hooks and soaring melodies, it had everything a classic early 90s rock album needed. However, their timing couldn't have been worse. By 1992, the grunge explosion was in full swing, and melodic hard rock was quickly falling out of favor. Without label support or a strong promotional push, Bangalore Choir faded almost as quickly as they arrived. While they later reunited for new material, their debut remains a hidden gem of the era. An album that could have been huge if it had been released just a few years earlier. These bands had the talent, the songs, and the potential to be massive, but fate had other plans. Whether it was bad timing, poor promotion, or industry shifts, they vanished before getting their due. But their music remains, waiting to be rediscovered by true rock fans who appreciate hidden gems.